From my perspective, we're all incredibly bad at arguing. We don't use data, we don't use history, we default to our emotions and pretend that's not what we're doing. And I think that while we're in the wake of Trump getting elected again, and there's hundreds, if not thousands, of people responding as to why, I want to show you how I navigate the information landscape, whether it's a TV host or a Reddit post, and see if we can collapse it all into simpler heuristics for understanding how to navigate it and understanding where our power and our individual responsibility is in digesting this information. I've taken this first post on r self on Reddit. That's where I'm going to scroll through a bunch of posts and see if we can frame their arguments and discuss what's wrong or right about them. The reasons that this person says basically why Kamala lost is that simply mothers with struggling sons only basically heard messaging about caring about daughters. Now, my first thought about this framing is that it's incoherent. When you're in a presidential campaign, you're going to have many messages. Zeroing in on one or stating that one thing being more prevalent than another, therefore, this is a big reason, just on its face doesn't make sense. All campaigns have many messages uh, delivered in different areas with varying frequency. I don't know that this person is trying to contribute anything meaningfully or is trying to say something about her own single motherhood or struggling son, but it doesn't seem to contribute to the conversation in a coherent way at all. Now, at the same time, you can't dismiss people who are fundamentally incoherent because everyone is pretty much fundamentally incoherent. So this is where you have to start asking questions. If you were going to be in a conversation, that's going to be one of the major difficulties we have here. But you have to start thinking to yourself, what would I need to know about this person to understand better where they're coming from? If they were capable of answering clearly, honestly, and consistently. And with the goal to not be deliberately abstracting everything out so it becomes absurd, but just to kind of highlight all of the assumptions we build into our argument making, I had some initial questions that you could throw out that would immediately make the whole thing that she had to say just feel really silly. So, like, how many mothers are there struggling with their sons or witnessing their sons struggling? If you don't know that number, then to start an argument with that as kind of your premise seems weird. Can you tell me five things Kamala's campaign focused on? If you make a statement like this is what she focused on, but you have no awareness of other things she focused on, it immediately kind of falls apart or it's decontextualized to the point where it's like why do you think that one was more or less strong than another one? And then finally, are you familiar with anything Kamala said to mothers with struggling sons? Because if she had a message, but it was just maybe inadequate to you, and you're discounting it just because you feel from some place that it wasn't enough or that it's in some kind of competition with her other messaging, then again, it just kind of seems to blow through what you're saying. So this is not somebody that I would engage too aggressively unless they could kind of ground what they're saying in some kind of number or in some kind of perspective that shows they have a grasp on what Kamala was even really campaigning on. This next post says why so many men feel abandoned by Democrats, and the first line is already very telling. One of the big reasons Kamala lost is young men are flocking to the Republican Party. This is immediately like almost like circular, right? It's immediately saying, well, Kamala lost because people aren't voting for her, or she's not. Or after I reference my fallacy sheet, it begs the question more than it's a circular thing. Um, so they're flocking to the Republican Party. What are the many reasons that they might be flocking to the Republican Party? Then, does that have anything to do with her losing? This post thankfully includes some statistics, and it makes some other claims about what the left is unwilling or unable to talk about regarding the problems of men. It says men account for 75% of suicides in the US, 70% of opioid overdose deaths. Men are 8 times more likely to be incarcerated. Young men are struggling in schools and increasingly the minority at universities, opting out of higher education. Now, all of these things can be explained by many other things, but at least there's some statistics to ground to suggest a broader premise that men are having problems. And if you're going to be talking about a platform for helping people, it would be smart to include them, maybe in a bigger way than Kamala appeared to. So, interestingly enough, this post seems to start in a place that would suggest kind of incoherence or colloquial ways in which we're not really being that logical or starting too broad, and then zeroes in very quickly on its premise, provides some data to suggest that there's a deeper issue, and then says, I hope this serves as a wake up call to anybody who thinks that disincluding men isn't going to be damaging to a political program. So this seems like a more or less well reasoned, coherent follow through. And incidentally, this has 17,000 upvotes. A lot of people see the logic of you can't isolate men, and men are struggling. This next post is called "The number of liberals I've seen saying they want all Latinos who voted for Trump deported is really disturbing me." This person explains that they voted blue their whole life, but have really diverged in the last 8 to 10 years based on how much corruption there is in the Democratic Party. So that's the claim. There's corruption in the Democratic Party that's developed over the last 8 to 10 years. You'll take notice that I've added an assumption box on my spreadsheet here. It is hopefully going to help me draw that step-by-step process, or that instinct, as I'm reading these posts, to see if I can collapse them all into a line to walk down. As I was reading this post, I'm hearing, or I'm feeling, 2 or 3 assumptions just in 1 or 2 sentences before they even get started in their broader explanation, and I want to get those written out. So I've read through the post, and I'm realizing that claims and assumptions kind of go hand in hand. So I'm just going to read them, and then if there's something that seems hard to parse as either or, I could break that down for other posts maybe. But so the claims in this post: Democrats don't wish to understand particular demographics. Democrats would prefer deportation. These are kind of the assumptive things built into how he's phrased this post. And 1 in 5 responses he's getting to this post are in line with racist deportation desires. And so the broad argument then is, therefore, he views the Democratic Party, I guess, or the Democratic disposition, as corrupt, and that will presumably lead him to start voting for Republicans or dropping the Democratic Party. That's unclear. But this feels like that's the basic breakdown of his argument. An initial question I would have for this person is, do they think that the Democratic Party as a whole is like this, or is this just some particularly inflamed reactions from people he's witnessing online? I'd want to know, does he know for sure that these responses are actually Democrats and not, some bot, some other country trying to stir up more shit? It just feels like a place that's another one of those posts that's I'm so exasperated and I can't believe the behavior of so-and-so over here, but I'm not asking any real critical questions about where the information is coming from, or if I'm just responding from this reactive place about these posts that I'm assuming all of this stuff naturally follows or is true. And again, I'm working this out in real time, how I think I want to explain and break this kind of stuff down, so I've thought to myself here too, I will put the assumptions and the claims in yellow with this idea of just maybe they're true, maybe they're not, maybe they're useful, maybe they're not. And then green questions, as in it's a good thing to ask questions. If your first instinct isn't to ask questions, or if you don't have initial questions that will help you round out all of the claims, all of the assumptions, you're not really engaging the process that I'm trying to have us build together. So even just for a quick visual, can I understand and draw out the claim being made? Then am I going to come up with reasonable questions to it? And then the kind of like therefores and the conclusions, all of that stuff is speculation. All of that stuff is things that we can't assume are true or false, but you kind of might also have an instinct about where somebody's going in how they've framed something or what assumptions they've built into what they're saying. This next post I like because the claim is very simple. It seems like the title is I hate being grouped up by my race and gender. And so the claim I'm drawing from that is it's personally anger inducing to be told to vote based on my skin color and gender. I think that's a very simple and straightforward point. I agree with it. I think that a lot of people feel that way. Um, this person's not even trying to draw extra conclusions from it. They're just expressing that this is something I hate. And if somebody's telling you I hate being communicated to in this way, can give you something to reflect on and what your approach is going to be next time. You have the opportunity at that point to ask them, what do you want to know? What is the way that you would like to navigate the world together? Is there something I can contribute to your perspective that I'm clearly not yet?